There are multiple ways to make liveries for your favorite cars in Assetto Corsa. This time I'm showing off how I make my own liveries, and maybe this way you will be able to learn some tricks from it. I'm not saying I'm an expert at this, I'm just here to show how I do stuff. You pretty much only need two things to begin with. First one is Content Manager, the paid version, and some sort of photo editor that you can use to export DDS files. In my case, I will be using GIMP, which is a free software that you can download. Once you found the car that you want to make a livery for, you can open up the car's folder at the bottom, and you can also open the car up in Content Manager's showroom. In the cars folder, you go into skins and you create a folder. This is where you will store all of the texture files for your own livery. In showroom, you click to the parts of the car to highlight the body panels, and then on the pop-up menu you click on the three dots that hints about the texture, and it will bring up another pop-up. There you can export the wireframe of the model and also the ambient occlusion texture. You can export them in the normal resolution or in any other resolution that you want to use, but I highly recommend 4K because it's just the clearest way to make liveries that don't look pixelated. Once you have the textures, you import the wireframe, and then as an extra layer you import the ambient occlusion texture as well. You duplicate the AO, make it all white, rename it to base, and then using the original AO texture you can check which parts of the car are the ones that you want to paint or just want to ignore. This is pretty much the basics of making a livery here. You can adapt this file exportation to pretty much any texture on the car or even to driver suits and crew members. For the rest of the video I will showcase how I make my liveries, but if you just want to know the basics of making a livery, you can pretty much stop the video here. For those who don't want to go through the hustle of looking for templates for driver suits and helmets, I will have all of my presets for this uploaded to my Nexus mods page. The link will be in the description. And for those who decided to stay along, welcome. Take a seat. It's not gonna take for long, but here are some tips that I can recommend. First of all, let's not forget how you export DDS files. In the case of DDS files, you technically only export the selected layer as the final file. So it's recommended to every time when you do an exportation, you create a new layer based on what's visible and then export that. Also, when it comes to compression, for the car's file itself, so like the body file, I don't recommend compression. For anything else, you can use DXT5. And also for the exportation of textures from the model itself, when I say that I recommend 4K, I only mean it for the car's body itself. You don't have to do this for every other texture on the car that you wish to recolor, because it's just, why would you do that? There's no need for that. It's always recommended to save the project files that you are working with in your editor, but you don't have to do this for every texture again. I just use it for the main body of the car and for the wheels. Also, I use ambient occlusion for the main body only. For the wheels, you can use it as reference, but I don't recommend exporting textures for the wheels with ambient occlusion on it, because it's just gonna be a texture that's rotating around with the wheels. So if you have baked in shadows on that texture, the textures will be rotating around and it will not look convincing. In the case of this car that I choose to make a livery for, coloring the wheels didn't do much for it, but it's gonna be a different case with every single car out there. So your mileage may vary. This can also be said about a few other things when it comes to painting your car. It can be said about tinting the windows, because in most cases cars use different texture for the outside of the windows and for the interior window. I recommend tinting them to 80% transparency at maximum, and also keep in mind that in some cases this separate texture for the interior windows are only for the first half of the car, so anything behind the B pillar might be using the outside texture as well. So if you're using virtual mirrors, it might not be a problem, but if you're using in-car mirrors, the original mirrors, it might be an effect with the tinted windows. Also, with cars that have multiple KN5 files for LOD, for those who don't know, LOD stands for level of detail, always recommended that you check them in the showroom as well. there's a slider for them that you can use. And this car is a perfect example for why you should check it, because for some reason, some parts of the car use different parts of the texture for the body on lower LODs. So the solution that I find the simplest one is just to not export the texture as a transparent file, always have the rest of it blacked out. That's it. You might not be looking at cars from that far distance and it will not be noticeable because that's the point of having a lower LOD, but in some cars the mapping of these textures might be a different case. I painted cars in the past where, for example, the doors would use different parts of the livery, so again, mileage may be vary. That's it. This is pretty much how you make a livery for your cars in Assetto Corsa. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and yeah, hopefully this helps. Have a good day or night. I'll be seeing you around.